In this episode, I am joined by Patty Smith, author of What Am I to Do Now? Patty shares her journey from fashion to healthcare, motherhood, and personal development. She emphasizes the importance of self-image, the power of asking specific questions, and the value of accepting help. Patty's experience and insights provide a roadmap for personal growth and resilience. This conversation covers topics such as accepting help, lessons of motherhood, mastering the mind, role of women in leadership, and the importance of compassion. My guest today is Patty Smith, mother, coach, author, speaker, and overall positive person. Her book, What Am I to Do Now? Simple Strategies to Navigate the Unknown and Ignite What's Next in Your Life, was an excellent read. I read it cover to cover. It helped me realize my own power and ignited a personal growth drive in me. And talk about perfect timing. I met you, Patty, when I was laid off in April, and I read your book. It was wonderful timing, very serendipitous. Thanks for coming on today and welcome.
Happy to be here, Bonnie. I'm so glad when we got introduced. It was good timing for me, too.
It's great. Before we dive into personal development, my first question is about motherhood. So, how was your pregnancy and delivery?
It was good. I started, the whole motherhood journey a little bit later in life. I was just hitting my mid 30s and I got married a little bit later in life. And my career kind of had me wait 5 years before I even started to try to have a child. And then I realized, what am I doing? So I was fortunate that I was able to get pregnant within like 4 months. And my pregnancy was great. It was pretty seamless. And my delivery, I was pushing for 4.5 hours and I was induced. And needless to say, I had two big hemorrhoids. But aside from that piece, it was amazing. I mean, what was interesting was being a mom a little bit later in life, and my husband's 8 years older than me. And yet, no one gives you a parenting handbook. Yes, there's books about being parents, but there's nothing like real life experience. And I'll never forget when we put her in the car seat to leave the hospital and just looking at this little lively thing, thinking, wow, this is 24/7, full responsibility. And, even being a little bit older and say experienced in life, we were like teenagers in a sense. I remember those first, month or so, you're up in the middle of the night and the baby's screaming and we got books all over the bed and we're looking at each other. What are we doing? And you definitely don't feel old. So, there's something about, it's just so much of this unknown, but there's nothing like it at the same time. And I feel so blessed and grateful that we were able to have a child. And, the minute I decided to get pregnant, my doctor's like, we have to start thinking the alternative. So I just feel blessed. And it was, my daughter just turned 21 in July. So it goes by fast.
Right. Thank you for sharing. I love how you said the early days can be so humbling. I can relate to that, right? The middle of the night with the books open. What are we doing? What, the baby's still crying? It's just so humbling. And going home from the hospital 24/7 responsibility it doesn't matter what age you are when you become a mom, you just feel like I can so relate to that, feeling like an entry level. Like I thought I was prepared, but it's on the job learning, and that's so beautiful too.
It really is. And I remember when I had her, a friend of mine who had already had 3 kids, when she called me, I had gotten home already with the baby and she's congratulating me. And then she said something to me and it always stuck with me. She said, "It's not about you anymore." And I thought, wow, it is so true. I mean, it's amazing how that just shifts you,
Friend
and
told
it's
me
humbling.
something similar. It is
Really?
humbling. She said, Bonnie, you're no longer the center of the picture, you're the frame. You are to frame your kids around. You are to frame, they're the center of because you're solely responsible for their well-being, and in the early days, just keeping them alive. It's wild.
Yes.
So that's
It's a
beautiful.
crazy responsibility, but at the same time, it's kind of awesome too, To me, what's even humbling is when they're really little, but they're watching you. They are literally watching everything you do. And when they start talking, they, will mimic things, and it really keeps you on your toes because, they are literally a sponge.
It's so true. And you talk a lot about failing forward and demonstrating and leading by example. The best way to practice leading by example and failing forward is knowing your kids are watching you, because you want your kids to watch you try new things and not be scared of failure and fail fast. And I changed a lot of my old perspectives on fear of failure when I had kids, because I wanted them to go forward with courage and try new things. And so that's so true. They're always watching you.
They truly are. And I feel so strong about it. And it's been, a learning curve. I think going through COVID and the pandemic, I mean, first of all, it opened up a lot of things for people and changed things and perspective. And it was not, everyone had a different experience with it. But, if you had kids during it, that was a whole nother animal, aside from your own navigation of it and how it affected you and even your business if you're working and all that, but your kids, and depending on what age they were, their personalities. And it was, my daughter was in high school. She was a junior, and they lost that second half of junior year, and then all the senior stuff, and then the getting into the college, and then the college. And it was like you felt like a new mom, because it was, how are we navigating them? We've never been through anything like that. And so learned a lot. And that was very humbling. And, my book, I was writing this book for a few years, start and stop, start and stop. And I remember I didn't tell my daughter I was writing the book. And then during the pandemic, I thought there is no excuse not to finish this book. So that's where my focus was. And one day she came in my office, was having one of those tough, difficult days, kicked off the internet, then they can't get back in and they're in school. And I was right in the middle of writing, you're trying to be in the zone. And I just said, "Could you just give me some peace? I'm trying to write this book." And she's like, "You're writing a book? What?" And I thought, oh my gosh, I have to finish this, because she thinks I'm writing this book, which I am. Before it was like, if I do it, if I do, and if I don't, then maybe I don't finish it. And it really got me thinking, this is why I want to continue to walk my talk. And with my clients, it's the same thing. Sometimes I'll catch myself as a coach. We're working together on something, and they have this breakthrough and they've done this work. And then it makes me reflect and go, self-check, how am I being in this? I know this, and I think with our kids, the best way we can teach them is by walking our talk. And part of that isn't just do it this way and about being perfect. It's about them watching us fail and how we get ourselves back up there, how we, are resistant to things, how we sometimes are humbled and have to apologize, how we get through whether somebody's maybe going through a divorce or a breakup. And it's not about the thing itself. It's about how are we navigating that change. And throughout my book, I talk about what's next evolution, because I feel like we're always evolving. We're meant to grow and evolve until we take our last breath. It means different things to you at different times. We have different seasons, right? As we're growing, some things are, when you're young, it's about what am I going to do and be? But sometimes it's just navigating. I got laid off, there was a divorce, maybe there's loss in the family, whatever it is, setbacks. But it's how we navigate that, because it's going to happen. We're going to get challenged. And I think if our kids see us navigate the good and the bad and the difficult and the in between, they see that, oh, okay, this is just one of those times. But that was really, to me, a pivotal time during the pandemic, because I don't think I've ever been in some ways so challenged. I mean, I've suffered a lot of loss and all that, and that was in my family, and those weren't easy times. But having a kid that is, it was just difficult. There were some periods that were really tough, and not knowing what to do, and everything you feel like you're doing doesn't seem to be helping, and having to just really rely on faith. For me, at least that's what it was. We aren't going to have all the answers, but it was just that really hung true. And, it's interesting because when I published my book, AARP magazine had reached out to me, one of the writers, and said that, I think this is kind of timely because our kids have gone back to school, and there's a lot of people that have been sending their kids to college, and they're empty nesters. And that's what the article was about. And they interviewed a few different people, and the things they pulled from my interview was about that very thing of your kids are watching you. And, even as you send them off, our kids are our life for many years while we're raising them. As they move on and you want them to go forward, they're also watching how we're moving forward, you know, and life is not just about our family. It's about how we continue to evolve ourselves. And it's okay. And I think women have a hard time with this sometimes, that it's okay to think about yourself and say, okay, what's going to fill me up now? And it's not that your kids are gone and they're out of the picture completely, but they want to see you move forward and not feel the pressure of, oh, my mom isn't doing well because I didn't call her enough. And this, you know what I mean? They want to see you. I mean, we're always teaching them. And I think we're teaching the younger generation, even if we don't have kids, even if you're working around people or you have nieces and nephews, how the best way I think that we can support the younger generation going through crazy times right now is that how are we leading ourselves and filling our cup? And there's so many ways that we can give back. And whether you're getting paid to do work in the world or you're volunteering, whatever that is. But I think that that's, to me, we need good role models. There's a lot of leaders out there, but it doesn't make them great leaders. And I think what makes a great leader is somebody who walks their talk.
It's so true. Sitting with your wisdom, with your wise words right now, it's so true. People who walk their talk. And what a perfect example of being forced to lead by example when your daughter walked into your office and then caught you writing your book. I can so picture that, like, oh man, now I have to finish it. And that's just so funny and relatable. But also, I agree, we're meant to grow and evolve until our very last breath. And it's such an important note that our kids are always watching us, even as they're leaving the house. When I was going off to college, I was looking at my parents and my home life and thinking, what are they doing now? I'm always watching. And so the leading by example is so beautiful. There's even people who don't have kids, sometimes these motivational speakers are saying, pretend like you have a camera crew following you around all day. And you have to make all the right decisions, like, going to the gym or doing the things that are in line with your long-term goals, but kind of a silly anecdote. So my next question is, I know why you finished your book and you talked a little bit about why you wrote your book, but why did you start writing your book?
When I've reinvented myself a few times. I'm in a constant evolution, right? My what's next evolution. And when I decided to become a coach and I got certified and all that, it was interesting. Once I got my certifications and I just was setting up my LLC, this idea dropped in to write a book. And I was speaking to different types of professional organizations. And that's how I was connecting with my clientele. And as a life coach. And I really enjoyed the aspect of speaking live in front of people. I loved the engagement with the audience. That's why that was kind of tough during the pandemic because, online was fine, but there's just something about the energy when you're face to face with people. And I loved that aspect. So I knew that I wanted to eventually grow, speaking into something bigger, like speaking in on bigger stages. And so the idea about I was going to do an ebook, and because I knew writing a book would give me some credibility. And then I thought, okay, so what do I want to write about? And then I just thought about, just about my own evolution and how it's so easy when we get into midlife to get stuck or to get stalled. And I think what happens, especially with women, is, our life, especially if you've been a mom, has been so much about the family that we've put ourselves a little bit in the back seat and sometimes too far back where our light starts dimming. And so our expectation of what we can do and our confidence sometimes shrinks a little bit, maybe not as a mom, but like, well, I've been out of this for a while, or it just is, it shifts things. And I think women struggle sometimes with worthiness, or am I too old, or I just haven't, things are moving so fast and there's so much technology now, or whatever it is. And it's really, we're letting ourselves get in our own way because life is just about experiencing and trying things and failing, just like when we were younger. And I think we start letting the outside affect us so much instead of, our life is really, it's about bringing I like to call our potential, our awesomeness. We have these amazing gifts and this amazing, like our purpose of what we want to share, how we want to be in the world. And I just look at it as, how do you want to show up for, to your kids or to the younger generation? Like you said, if you had a crew following you around, think about legacy. It's like we were meant to evolve and do things and give back in the world for the rest of our life. But it starts with, what fills you up? What kinds of things, are important to you? And to just start navigating one step in front of the other. There's something that I always tell my clients, all you have is the present day, right? We know that, right? And my mentor has this, I love this. She said, every day is like a lifetime in miniature. It has a beginning and it has an end, and you get to shape it because we don't know what, I lost my mom my older sister when she turned 50. She turned 50, and 6 months later, she passed away. And then 5 years after that, I lost my mom, who was 82. And 3 weeks later, my niece was killed just shy of her 21st birthday. And what that really reminded me of is, it doesn't matter your age. You don't know what's ahead of you, but every day is a gift. And so how are you going to show up? And, I think it's just about asking yourself, okay, what would I love? What are things that just light me up? And just start giving yourself the opportunity to think about those things. Use your imagination. When I talk to people, when I'm first working with them, and I'll ask them, what would you love? What do you want? And they almost always tell me what they don't want. And so I'll ask them again, okay, now that I know what you don't want, what would you love? And they really get stuck with that question because they're like, I haven't thought about that in so long. And they may know I want to be happy. I want to be more, involved with more fulfilling work or whatever, but they haven't spent the time. And we have an amazing mental faculty called the imagination. And when we're young, we use it the way we're intended to imagine possibilities. And what happens as we get on in life and we let more of the outside world get inside of us, we start using that imagination against us, imagining worst case scenarios. And what you put out there, what our thoughts are really how we think about things is how we manifest things. So you want to focus on what you focus on expands, what you give your attention to, and what you don't constricts. So put your attention on what you want and not on what you don't want. So, that would be my advice, is to start imagining different possibilities and don't worry about how am I going to do it or what are people going to think. Just to start using some time to yourself to think about, okay, I'm at this point in my life. What are things that are important to me? Because I think that's when you start getting in your second act of life, the purpose is connected to what's important to you, what matters. And I think, my first career was in fashion and I loved it and it was amazing. And it evolved in different ways. And then when my sister got sick and I stopped working and became a full-time caregiver, and then she passed away, it's like something just changed in me. And as much as I loved, that first chapter of my life, I suddenly felt like I wanted to get into healthcare. And it just felt like the work that I wanted to do just was connected to something different. And it didn't make my first chapter, I was so happy about it, but that's my evolution, right? Life happens and you never know where it's going to lead you. And I think being open-minded, staying curious, and not worrying about how you're going to look or how you might, the unknown, when you try anything new, you're going to fail, right? You're going to fall down. Think about a toddler when they're learning to walk. They're learning to walk by falling down. That's how they learn. They don't think I'm not going to walk anymore because I fell down a couple times. They keep trying until they walk. When we're learning how to drive, right? It's scary, but your desire to want to drive is typically larger than the fear of it. So you get through it and you end up driving. And yet we use this against ourselves as we get older. That's why our world gets smaller, and it doesn't have to.
I love how you said we can use our imagination for possibilities, but not worst case scenarios. And as children, we do this automatically. We imagine a beautiful world, we're playing with our friends, but then as we get older and grow up, the exterior world comes in our mind a little bit more. And, be realistic. I am guilty of this, using my own imagination kind of against me. Oh, that person didn't like what I said. Why did I say it that way? And we can really use our mind for our own benefit. It sounds it sounds so silly and so basic. Like, obviously, wouldn't you do that? But actually, so many of our thoughts are automatic. And so, what you're saying about this, imagine possibilities, is so beautiful and helpful. Very helpful. It had so many wisdoms in here, Patty. I was taking notes. I also like how you said that the idea dropped into your mind to write a book, because I can relate to your clients sitting there and thinking, well, I know what I don't want. And I certainly don't want this, and I certainly don't want that, but I know how I want to feel. And then starting with how you want to feel, that's when ideas can drop in. One of my really good intuitive friends said, when an idea drops in, those are the ones you trust. Those are the ones that just, that's what I want. It can be when you sit and you're still and quiet, you just know what the desires of your heart are. No, I just love that
Yeah.
it dropped in. You use that term.
You think about when people talk about meditation. And, meditation is about getting still. And, when I used to think meditation, is getting still and and all that and quieting your mind. But if you think about what the purpose of being still is, it's being still to calm everything so you are open to receive ideas. And when you're just moving like this all the time, even if there's a good idea, you don't even have the time to let it drop in, see what comes of it. That's what the beauty of brainstorming and masterminding is, you know, Napoleon Hill wrote Think and Grow Rich, and he talked about one of the things that very successful people do is they mastermind, and they said it's like there's a third mind, right? A third eye, because it's hard to see the picture when you're in your own frame sometimes. So you mastermind to come up with different ideas, but you can even do that with yourself in meditation, because the point is getting still and then thinking about, like, say you're having a hard time with something, whether you're coming up with an idea for something, you're wanting to change something, and so you're asking questions right out to the divine or the universe, and just allowing that question to sit out there and then be still, and ideas will start coming. That's why it's so great to write things down and just let it flow like water coming out of a faucet. Because, if you have a faucet that hasn't been turned on in a long time and you turn it on, sometimes gunk might come out, right? Sediments, because it's been sitting, stagnating. But if you allow the process and you leave it on, eventually water starts flowing. And when you're coming up with ideas and you're allowing ideas to come out, it's good to write them down and then look at them. And eventually you're going to say, there's an idea that really lights me up, you know, but you have to allow yourself to be still and to really be open to receive so things actually can drop in.
I'm learning this too. Recently, I've been talking with Tara Stiles, is a yoga instructor, and she does the Strala yoga, and she talks a lot about softness. And I
Mm,
feel like in my life, I've been rigid for so long. I've been so rigid. I've done things the rigid way. And this leads to, in your body, sore muscles, stiff joints, but also
yeah.
kind of a rigidity of the mind where, well, that's not how I've done things in the past. And it does hinder creativity. It hinders the flow. And this water in the faucet analogy is very useful, where sometimes when you're sitting and like letting things flow, some gunk can come out initially, but you get used to it. And that's when really beautiful ideas flow. So nice.
And,
Patty.
there's, you know, being like, I speak on self leadership and reinvention. And, I think about self leadership because, even raising my daughter, right? And, you want them to be good leaders of their life. And, it really got me to reflect on, there's many leaders in the world and there's people that are in leadership positions, right? But we should all be leaders of our own life. And what got me thinking about that was, there's this movie. I love the holidays and I love holiday movies. Some are a little sappy, but I loved this holiday movie. It's just a classic for me. And there's something that I took from that movie that once I heard that line, it just got me on this thinking about self leadership. And it's the movie called The Holiday. It's with Kate Winslet and Cameron Diaz. And, they change homes for the holidays. One's in England and one's in LA. And they're both getting over breakups. And it's Kate Winslet's character, Iris, that comes from England, and she's staying next door to, she's staying in this beautiful mansion where Cameron Diaz lives, and lives next door to some older man who was an Oscar winning writer. and they go to dinner and, they're talking and he's saying, I just have this question. How can a beautiful woman like you, leave her home over the holidays, go in a stranger's house and be by themselves? Like that just sounds so crazy. And she said, she starts talking about how this guy broke her heart and got engaged and didn't tell her. And he says, and he wrote a lot of great parts for leading ladies. And he looks at her and he says, Iris, he says, wrote about this all the time. We have the leading lady and we have the best friend. You, I can tell, are leading lady, but for some reason, you're behaving like the best friend. And I love the line she says. He says, for God's sakes, you should be the leading lady of your own life. And that just went like, even if you don't see yourself as a leader, why wouldn't you be the leader of your own life? It's like starring in your own picture of your own movie. Like, and think about being a mom, being a leader of your family. Moms are CEOs of their families, if you think about it. I looked at my mom. She raised 6 kids. She had to run a budget. She had to run a household. I think women don't even recognize themselves as that way, but you are a leader and you should be the leader of your own life. And leadership starts with how you lead yourself. It's not just how you show up even in a leadership position, but how are you showing up in life every day for yourself, for your kids, for your family, for your community. And, I think great leaders know how to lead themselves first because, in order to be a good role model, it's walking your talk.
So
And
good. It's
I
so
want to share
good.
this quick story that you run in my book, I'm sure, but it was just such a powerful thing to observe as a mom. When my daughter was 7, and this is when my sister, who was fighting cancer, became terminal one day, and we moved her in. And it was like when school started for my child, who was in first grade, and my niece and nephew, which was my sister's kids. We were taking them in part-time. So it was just a crazy time. And so my daughter starts first grade and she's excited because she gets into a class with her friends. And this is, right at the time when my sister's moving in with us and now her kids are moving in part-time. And it just changed everything in our household, right? Very disruptive. So my daughter, I pick her up from school and she goes, Mommy, I'm in a split class. I just found out. I'm like, what happened? She goes, they pulled me out of this class and said I'm going to be in a split class. And it means there's some first graders and some second graders. And at first she seemed like okay about it. But then I think when she processed it, she was like, I don't want this. I don't even know anybody. And then some of these kids are older. And I thought, and she's like, I don't want to go to school. And I'm thinking, I can't deal with this right now. Like my world has just been pulled out from under me. My sister's terminally ill. So I made an appointment. I told her, I'm going to go talk to the principal of your school. And she's like, okay. So I went to talk to her and she heard me out. And, it was very tearful. She had a Kleenex box. We're talking about it. And she heard me out. And I thought for sure she'd say, okay, I totally get it. And she looked at me and she said, I hear you and I feel so bad. I'm so sorry, but will you listen to why we're doing this? I talked to her kindergarten teacher and she also agrees that, this is not a punishment. We think that she can thrive in this environment, being with even the older kids too in the split class. And we wouldn't do it if we didn't think so. And I hear what you're saying, what's going on in your family, but would you just give it a try? And I was like shocked. I'm like, and I think that my body was just going through so much because all of this change had just happened that I went, okay. And, she said, and if it doesn't work, we can have it go back. And if your daughter wants to talk to me, let her know she can talk to me. And I walked out of there in shock. So when I picked up my daughter from school, she's like, did you talk to her? And I said, yeah. And she told her what happened. And she's, she looked, I says, but she said, if you want to talk to her, you guys can have a meeting. And this little first grader, 7-year-old looks at me and she goes, set up a meeting, Mommy. And I said, I will, but this is not my meeting. I already had my meeting. This is your meeting. So we set it up. And so next, I don't know if it was the next day or 2 days later, we have the meeting. And I thought she's not even going to speak. We go in that meeting. And what was amazing to me was my daughter, but it was also the way this principal handled herself. So my daughter, she says, I understand that, you're upset and this and that, so tell me how you're feeling. And my daughter just lets it rip. She's like, I know my mom came to talk to you and I don't like being in this class. I don't have my friends. It's making me nervous. All this is going on in my house. And she goes on to her whole thing. And the whole time the principal she is so in tune. She's watching her, she's listening, she's allowing her to have the floor to speak. And it was just an amazing process. Like there was this respect for this 7-year-old. It wasn't like she was just, like, hurry up, finish talking. And so they had some back and forth. And then the principal said, now, will you just hear me out of why we're doing this? And then she told her about all these strengths she saw in my daughter that really her teacher saw and why they were doing it. And then she asked her, would it be okay then if we just tried this because we just really believe in you? And my daughter's like, okay. And she said, and if it doesn't work, we can change. And it was just I was blown away by how this principal literally was such an amazing leader, how she was a good listener. She allowed, the communication, but how she didn't make this, she allowed a 7-year-old to have the floor the way she did, and how she was such an amazing listener, and how she, pointed out all these good things about her and still let my daughter process this and have an opinion on it and have an opportunity to be part of this decision. And so when we walked out, I didn't know what I thought my daughter might just, unload on me. And we walk out and she's holding my hand. And remember, she looks up at me and she goes, Mommy, she goes, you know what? I'm okay. I don't have to, leave. And I just was like, what just happened? That was to me such an example of amazing leadership. It really was. And then I was blown away at my daughter of the leadership of having a voice and not being afraid to use it. So it was,
And that's such a powerful story. And kudos to you, Mom, for setting up that meeting, telling your daughter, I already had my meeting. If this is your meeting, the floor is yours. And that example of the principal being such a wonderful leader, allowing her to share her story, give her the floor, give her the space, and truly hear her out, and then explain her perspective. And will you just ask her, will you just try it? What an empowering experience for your daughter. That's so nice.
yeah, it was amazing. And, and not that year was not difficult. There still was definitely, she had her days. But you know what? One day the teacher had told me that she raised her hand in class and she said, I'm having a really hard time, meaning, well, and she talked about that her aunt's at home and she's, sick. And the teacher said it took her everything just to hold it back. But I thought, wow, just to allow herself to be vulnerable like that. And I knew it wasn't an easy time for her. And, I honestly, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I will say this as a mom to all the moms out there, and even navigating through the teenage years where, oh my gosh, you are so challenged and your kids can give you such a hard time and you feel like, but what doesn't kill them does make them stronger. And I look back at some of the things that my daughter had, been through her own tough challenges and what she's doing now. It is so prepared her for where she's at. And had she not had these struggles and things that we can't always help them with, but you allow them to deal with them and you be the best role model you can be, but you have to allow them. It's just such an amazing thing. So just hang in there, and know that the struggles are not, it's so true. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And you just got to trust the process. But yet I think if you can show your kids yourself, when you yourself are going through a bad day or a tough time, that you know what? Yeah, I'm having a hard time today, but you know what? I'm going to get through this. I'm going to figure this out.
Mm.
And so to me, that is the epitome of role modeling.
You touched on two things that I think are so crucial. One of them is perspective. Like, first of all, I'm so sorry for your loss in such a short, condensed amount of time with your sister and then your mother and then your niece. I can't imagine what you were going through at that time. I think you shared how it led you to have a really unique perspective on the gift that each day is, because we're not promised this time. And every time I speak with you, I mean, first of all, you're an outstanding speaker. Your book was a page turner. I read it cover to cover. It was so empowering because it's so full of this vitality of and this perspective that you have, that we're not promised tomorrow and every day is a lifetime from the morning till the evening. I'd never heard that before. I love that. So number one is perspective. And then number two is the leading lady of your own life, because It sounds, well, the leading lady of your own life, from the holiday example to also the principal example. Those are similar, where your daughter at 7 was the leading lady of her own life. She was. She had the floor. She called that meeting with the principal, and then even makes me cry too, thinking of the safety she felt in that classroom, saying, I'm having a hard time. Because she is the leading lady of her own life, and you instilled that in her at a very young age. I think that's just so beautiful, Patty. So
Oh,
thank you for sharing those stories.
and thank you for sharing that perspective, Bonnie, because I never thought about it with her in that light of she was the leading lady. I was looking at she's building her leadership muscle, but thank you for reminding me and sharing that perspective because that just made my heart sing.
Yay! My heart is singing too. Can you hear it? I can hear yours. My next question is, what would you tell a mom who's looking at a career pivot? We were just talking about reinvention, but it's so common, especially after COVID or especially after having kids, career pivots.
I think no matter what, like think about how we look at our work. Some people are doing work that they love, that they're very aligned with, and other people are doing work that maybe is okay, but it's kind of like a means to an end. And there's not a right or a wrong with it. But if you are like I'm finding when I'm working with women that are a lot of times they are in this kind of midpoint in life. And whether it's just they may not even want to leave their job, but they're feeling like they're not liking how things are. So I always talk about, first of all, you want to, at a minimum, put on a fresh perspective. Like, how are you showing up every day? It's why it's important to look at what would I love and think about all areas of your life in how, the work that you do, in your health and wellness, in the kind of relationships you want to have. And relationships aren't just, your significant other and your kids and your family, but even people that you're working around. How are you showing up? What kind of relationships do you want to have with certain people? Really getting, the book put in 3 parts. The first part's foundational, building kind of a foundation. And the second part is my actual Ignite You 7-step system. And then the third part is overcoming obstacles, because a lot of times when we decide to move forward with new things that are exciting, then the paradigms come in and the roadblocks. And it's like, how do we overcome those? Because we don't want to go backwards and just give up. But the Ignite You system is very much there for this reason we're talking about. How do we get started? And it's kind of taking you through a process of, using your imagination, getting clear with what you want and why it's important to you. And you may decide at the end of the day, you putting on a different lens. I talk about living through a vision-driven lens of possibility versus living through a condition-driven lens of limitation. Oops, sorry, I lost my ear pod. And so, thinking about, okay, what is it that I'm trying to do? Like, how do I want to be feeling every day? What kind of relationships do I want to have with people? Really getting a clarity with your big picture first, and then move forward from there, because it may just mean realigning how you're even looking at your work every day. Eventually, it may take you to decide to go for maybe a promotion or a position that you never thought that you would ever think to do or you were worthy of. Or it might be saying, this is just a toxic environment. I can't believe that I've been putting up with this. I'm going to be working at something. And even if you're not needing to work for pay, your kids go away. Like, what are you doing with your time? You're trading your time for something. So why not think about what are environments that I would love, and start looking at work in those areas. Or if it's volunteer, what kinds of things really pull at my heart? What are things that are important to me? Because when you're involved with work, whether you're being paid for it or not, where you feel like you're contributing, you've got respect, you're able to use, things that you're good at, you're going to just feel different every day. Not that every day is a great day. You're going to have days that are difficult, but why not be involved in work that you love, because you're going to be working at something? But sometimes it really is just a perception change yourself, because it's like, well, how am I showing up? Well, I've been having a pretty bad attitude. I going into work already feeling, like I have a big chip on my shoulder. And so much of this is inside work first, and I think until you get a clarity, first, in my system, inspire your imagination, right? Like, just start imagining different possibilities, like literally allow yourself the opportunity to dream. You don't even have to share it with anybody, but allow that. And then it's a matter of, okay, here's some possibilities. Now it's the G. Get clear with what you want, like really specific. What is an example of what that could look like for me? And then ground it with why it's important to you. Because when you know why something's important to you, and when you get challenged, your stakes in the ground, you will weather the storm when you have a strong why. And so, so my system kind of takes you through that. And then you end with the U in the Ignite You system, which is unite with a new self image. And that really kind of reminds me of the holiday movie. She said, be the leading lady of your life. There's a book that I love and I even teach it. It's a Maxwell Maltz book and it's called Psycho-Cybernetics. It's all about your self-image. And he says you can never outperform your own self-image, how you see yourself. You will never outperform the way you see yourself, no matter what people tell you, but you can change it. And the way you change it is you've got to start seeing yourself in this next best version of yourself. What does it look like? What does she feel like? And so I thought I'd like to compare this to an update. We update our phone, we update our computer, we update our wardrobe, we update our car. Why wouldn't we update how we see ourselves? And so when we have a clarity and a dream and a goal and, a strong why, and, we make a decision for it and we're ready to take action steps for it, the world's your oyster. And so, and not being afraid of failing. Failing is just feedback, right? It's how we learn. And not to worry so much about what everyone thinks and to really just connect here. And that's why I think meditation is so important, because that's when you really get still and start thinking about asking your questions. Does this thing feel right? Making a decision. Does it serve what I'm trying to do here? Because when you're clear about your vision and about your goals, it's easier to say yes and no to things. There's a lot of good things that sound amazing, but we only have so much time, right? And so we can't manage time. People talk about managing time. You can't really manage time. It just is. What you're really managing is your choices and your activities. So what are you choosing to say yes to and no to? And so anyway, so that's my system in the book is really a tool to help you if you're feeling stuck and you're like, I just don't even know where to get started.
Thank you. I never thought about time management is actually choice management because time flows through us. Time just is. Time management is actually choice management. And I like also how you talk about your heart focus and slowing down, in meditation and really knowing what your values are, your why you're doing these things. And it actually makes me think, I'm going to draw another similarity, but I think, your Ignite system has Ignite is like fire, right? When you ignite a lighter, and it makes me think of the element of fire. Well, in our hearts, we have electricity that literally creates the heartbeat. And so those two things, to me, there's a line between them. I feel like I'm connecting the dots of what you're saying. And then speaking of our hearts, you talk a lot about giving back, making sure that our output into the world is something positive and, leave the campsite cleaner than how you found it mentality. And you talk a lot about our relationships, not only just with our family, but with those around us, like my children's teachers or my neighbor, or it's just so beautiful what you're saying. And if we have a heart focus, our choice management becomes easier and clearer. Our direction can become clearer. Thank you. The Ignite You, I have a follow-up question. What do all of the letters stand for again?
Okay, so so it's Ignite You. So the I is inspire your imagination. So first, you want to imagine different possibilities. The G is get clear with what you want and why it's important to you. That's grounding it. The N is nail down your decision to go for it, because until you make a decision, nothing happens. You got to claim it. And then the next I, invite in support of like-mindedness and mentorship, because it is hard to see the picture when you're in the frame of your own circumstances in life. And when I say like-mindedness, it's people that will support you with the things that you're going for. And sometimes it's not the people that are the closest to you. Sometimes it's just finding, like they call it, a partner in believing. You're there to support each other, not to talk each other out of things, but also to support each other. Because sometimes, you're being hard on yourself and you've got somebody to point out the good stuff and to be that encouragement. or sometimes to, say, hey, you're getting off filter here a little bit. So, and that's where mentorship can also help you if you're trying to do something that you haven't done before. And I'm doing that right now, surrounding myself with people that are already doing something that I want to get to this next level. And they're doing it in a way that I admire and they've shown success with it. So, that's where mentorship can help you because you don't have to do it alone. Just like being a mom, and when I went through all this with my sister, one thing I learned from some of the people around me, my community, some of my friends was it does take a village. And I will tell you that asking for help is not an easy thing to always do. My daughter, when she was in elementary school and my sister, all this happened, one day I got a call from the Sunshine Committee. This woman goes, I'm from the Sunshine Committee from your daughter's school. And I'm like, I've never heard of you. And she says, that's because we're under the radar. She says, we only come out when there's people that need us. We don't make a big deal, but we heard, and I think it was from the principal, about your situation. And she said, we would love bring you meals every day, bring dinners. And do you want to know what I said to the Sunshine Committee? I said,
What?
thank you, but no, thank you. And my reasoning for doing that was because my sister was very picky. And I kept thinking, oh my gosh, it's just going to be too hard. They're going to bring stuff. And I was thinking, even if she was being picky, I could have had this for the rest of the family. I was just in that mode of, I can just do this all myself. I don't know what I was thinking. That would have been amazing to have the Sunshine Committee help me. But it taught me because then when my sister was going downhill and I was up through the night because she was getting up and turning the gas on the stove and I was sleeping downstairs and then I was getting no sleep. And my husband finally puts his hands on my shoulders and he says, Patty, you are cracking and we need to get help in here. And that's when we finally hired caregivers in the evening. But I realized like I was breaking. And that is when I learned how to ask for help. And it really taught me a lesson of it does take a village. And it doesn't always have to be a scenario that like that. But I'm saying it's okay to ask for help. We aren't meant to not do all of this, not just a business, but life. And that's why I think community is so important and that inviting in support, like-mindedness, I'm really speaking to community on that one. And then the T is to take inspired action every day because nothing happens until you act. The acronym ACT is action changes things. And I call it imperfect inspired action because it's about taking the step, not perfectly. And again, this is us showing our kids, I'm going to go for something. And when it's new, it's most likely going to be shaky and I'm going to make missteps. But it's okay because action does move you forward. And then the E is to embrace gratitude throughout your journey because, we all vibrate. We're all energy. Everything's energy. And the highest vibration that we vibrate on is in alignment with abundance. That's the abundance vibration. And that is also the gratitude vibration. So if you're having a tough day and you just can't get out of it, I'm trying to be positive. But I just can't. Best thing you can do is think of something that you're grateful for. I don't care if it's your breathing. Because if you're not breathing, you're not here, right? Or do something nice for somebody, make a phone call, open a door for somebody. But when you are thinking of somebody else or you're bringing yourself to a place of, I am so fortunate that I've got my family or that I've got a support system or I have a good job, whatever it is, there's always something you could be grateful for. I mean, it really brings you back to, and so I say embrace that throughout your journey. And I mean the good and the bad and the in between. There's always something you could be grateful for. And what a wonderful thing that you can teach your kids, right? By you doing it. And then, the Ignite system was the Ignite system. And then I added the U at the end. And that's the Unite with a new self-image, because on your journey, we need to continue to evolve and update our self-image as we're growing. It's like when you have a vision of, oh, I want to do this, start seeing what does that woman look like? Meaning, what is she doing? Because there's certain things she does today that you're going to do then, right? I'm still going to cook or I'm still going to shower in the morning and do things with my family. There's just certain things you're going to do. But then there's other things that woman's doing that you're not quite yet doing. So maybe some of those things are things that you can actually do now, even in your current life. And maybe other things you're going to have to develop skills, or maybe it's going to make you think, oh, I'm going to have to take a class in order to do that. But there's always something you can do every day. That's why I say, what can I do from where I am with what I have? because there's always something you could do. There's always a step you could take. It doesn't have to be this big overwhelming. So that's the Ignite You system.
You. The imagine, get clear, nail down, invite support, take inspired action, embrace gratitude, and the self image. The
Yeah,
self
yeah.
image one, I'm so thankful that you added that in there because this book helped me realize that I am already what I admire. So I admire, for example, I admire ease and passion and clarity and positivity, silliness, brilliance. And sometimes I think those are outside of me, but actually believe that I already possess those to be able to even see those. And that really helped me, understand that concept that you already have what you admire. It's a reflection, and I really like that. Yeah.
And thank you for saying that, because what you're talking about is, I'm so glad you put it the way you did, because that's when I say that awesomeness lives inside of us. Life isn't about getting something. We already have what we need. It is awareness work. And as you self-reflect, and we, continue to, what can I do from where I am with what I have every day? Take an action. Okay, sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. I love that quote by John Maxwell. How we move forward, how we move forward. Kobe Bryant, I saw this interview with him few years ago, and just always stuck with me. And he's talked about, you want to talk about focus, okay? He said when he was playing basketball, it was all about, how can I be a better basketball player? Yes, he was super competitive. Yes, he wanted to win. But even bigger than that, his goal was always very clear. I want to be the best basketball player that I can be. And he said it made it very easy to say yes and no to things, because he's like, I had all these opportunities coming across my way that were amazing, and some of them I was really interested in. But he said, I would ask myself when I was playing basketball, is that going to help me become a better basketball player? And if it wasn't going to, I would say not right now, or, it's on the back burner, or just no. But it really helped him with his boundaries and with his focus. And, we can get so distracted by things, even when we have goals. I think so important that's why when you have a clarity, and you can really, our e-women, Sandra Yancey, said this at our last conference, simplify to amplify. And if you think about it, as we get clear and focused, we can amplify. But this whole journey, to this point of what I was making about your comment, our journey is about bringing out our awesomeness, our gifts, our talents, what's already in us. And when we start living from an outside in versus inside out, we're waiting for people to tell us that it's okay and we're okay. And that's what's confusing, because they don't know what's inside us. And so our journey is about discovering that and letting it out. And I love how you made that point. It's so true. So it's awareness work every day. And that's why we're supposed to evolve ourselves every day.
Life is awareness work. Yes. Simplify to amplify. Asking yourself, is this choice in line with my long term goals? With that Kobe Bryant example, it gets clear. Not waiting for the outside world to tell us, what actions to take. And it goes along with the leading lady of Kate Winslet. If you're listening, huge fan. The Kate Winslet, the leading lady. There is a book, The Four Agreements by
Yes. Louis.
Miguel Ruiz. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
And he talks about the movie theater example of you're watching your life from your perspective, and you know yourself, your personality, your values, your motives, your desires the most, 100%. You go next door, it's your mother watching your life through her lens. You are yourself, but you're, 20% different because it's her perspective. And the whole point of it was, because I used to think, being the leading lady of my own life, I do want to take information from the outside world to make decisions, but the whole idea was actually, what's best for you. It sounds so simple. You know what's best for your life. Taking time to be clear, having a heart focus, asking yourself what those long-term goals are. Those are the steps to take. So I love all your wisdom.
And we have to operate in the outside world. And it's not even, it's nice to ask for opinions, right? Because sometimes it helps you see something from a different perspective. And when you've allowed yourself to be open to that, it could shift you. So, but at the end of the day, it's still up to you to this So it's great to talk to people and ask people, but at the end of the day, that's what your intuition is. And we aren't, this program I have where I teach on these 6 mental faculties. We were born with them, and there are 6 superpowers, but we've never really been taught how to use them. And it's really, about how we use, our mind. And it's the imagination, it's the intuition, it's the will, it's the memory, it's your reason factor, and it's your perception factor. And when you realize that it's us developing these mental faculties that we've been born with, but we aren't really taught how to use them in service of our life. And half the time we're using them against ourselves. And so, I gave the example with the imagination. It can either work for you or you can use it against yourself, but it's a powerful tool. And so I think I always go back to remember when you were a little kid and looking at the world through innocent eyes of possibility, and to bring yourself to that place of, pureness and innocence, because you watch little kids, they're playing, think about when they make believe. When you play make believe, you really put on that character, right? When you're playing, you're really being that person. You're putting on that persona. It's like an actor or actress, right? Great actors become their part. What do? They study the character. They study the nuances. So when you're thinking about this next version, it's like, okay, what are some of the things about her? And then you can start saying, oh, well, I could start applying some of that in my life. But it's so much about how you show up and learning how to use, like when you get quiet and you start meditating, you're going within, you're using your intuition, you're learning how to use your intuition and that inner pointer. You're learning how to trust it more, right? That's something we're supposed to do, but we tend to we're not trained this way. And I actually have a free gift for the listeners if they go to my website, pattysmithcoaching.com. Patty's with an I. And it's something that's in my book. It's called My Awesomeness Creed. But if you go online and you download it, I put it in fact, it's right there. It's got a pretty border, and you can put it up in your office or frame it. And my whole point in doing it is I took the word awesomeness, since I feel like that's your potential, that's your light, that's your gifts, your talent, your heart, your soul. And I made it an acronym to I will be authentic and show up. So it takes the whole word awesomeness. And my thought on doing this is every day you wake up in the morning, right? And you get dressed. And, a lot of times when you're getting dressed, you're thinking about what am I doing today? And you know how sometimes clothes can make you feel very empowered, or like say you're going to work out and you're in your workout gear and you feel strong. You put on your clothes, right? You're putting something on. Why not put your awesomeness on? Why not get dressed inside too? Why not put on an empowering mind, before you go out the door? And so I wanted to bring that in just because I felt like the timing was good for what we're talking about. So
Just put my cloak of awesomeness on. That's
yeah.
so creative and magical. And I love that idea.
Well, Tony
And the
Robbins
six superpowers.
talks about creating state, I remember
Yeah.
seeing, I think he has a movie or a YouTube thing that's called something about My Guru. And it's kind of behind the scenes before he goes on his big stages. And part of it is showing him how he literally gets into state. Like he gets into the state of mind and the state of being so he can show up like fully the way he wants to for his audience. And, in a sense, my thought with this is put on that awesomeness so you can show up for your life, for the day that's in front of you. And, sometimes it's hard to get ourselves into state if we wake up and we aren't in the best state of mind. And, sometimes we just can't do it on our own. So that was my thought was this might be a cool gift that's printed out in front of you. And, just a reminder, I'm getting dressed and I'm putting on my awesomeness today.
The website is Patty with an I, pattysmithcoaching.com.
Yes.
Thank you. My next question is, what has motherhood taught you?
Well, I think what I said in the beginning about being humble and it's not about you. I mean, that I will say this when I was pregnant, but getting close to delivering, honestly, I was a little bit nervous because I was thinking this is going to really change a lot. Like I'm used to taking care of myself and even being married. We got that, but we're still two individuals. But it was a little bit frightening of thinking like,
Ask me.
it is not going to be about me. And, this is a little selfish, but like, how is this going to impact me? No, it's the best thing. I think it's a good humbling because it also teaches you about others, not because you're helping a kid develop. When you're in a relationship, even with a spouse, you're two people and you're in a partnership, right? But raising a kid, you are helping a being develop. And their early years are very much about you and but it's different. And to me, that was an amazing gift that, it's an amazing power. It can be a little bit overwhelming and it's a little scary. But at the same time, I think that kind of humbling has taught me so much about myself. And I will say this, through the teenage years, which was a whole nother phase, boy, did that challenge me, even as a coach and everything. I mean, your kids, when they're struggling, and especially at that age, they're not at a loss for words and not always the easiest words. They can be very piercing, and they can also, because your kids know you, they can hit below the belt and they can hit some big triggers. I think the humbling piece of it and helping me realize that it isn't just about me. It's about someone else. And I think that we can kind of apply that to even the world, to humanity. I mean, it isn't really just about us. It's about the people around us too. And I think, we can really help people by, number one, being better humans, but also this whole thing about kindness and really just, and your kid's a perfect example of that, because we want what's best for our kids, but we really should want what's best for everybody too, and that's why, it all kind of ties in. But I think just it was such a humbling experience, and yet it helped me grow in a way that I don't know, had I not had the experience of being a mom, I don't know that I would have learned that to that degree, because it's an amazing bond. It's beautiful. It's also scary. It also is frustrating. Sometimes you want to pull your hair out. But I will say this, getting on the other side of it, such a beautiful thing. And all the things that some of the just rage and the just comments, I get cards from my daughter now, or even texts, and it's just amazing. I'm realizing, wow, she really was listening. But boy, it didn't seem like it, the way she was acting to me. And, the other day we had sent a text back and forth about something, and I was just telling her, I'm so proud of you for this. And she just says, well, it's because, Mom, I'm a part of you. And it's just so beautiful when you allow you are able to get on the other side of that. But boy, when you're going through it, it's not easy. And yet, you know what? It's just all part of our journey. And just know that, even during the hard times, you can role model. Even if you're not getting along. What kind of person do you want to be? You can't control anybody but yourself. You can't, maybe when they're young, but at the end of the day, it is about letting them develop as humans, you develop as a human, and supporting them, and walking your talk, every day, and how we lead ourselves till we take our last breath. My dad is about to turn 95, and you want to talk about a reinventor. My dad was a guy who was more introverted. My mom was the social butterfly. And my dad was pretty adventurous, but he was more of a shy guy. And, my mom was the cook. She was the social calendar. And when my mom passed away before my dad, which we all thought he would go first because he had a major heart attack in his early 50s. But my dad was 87 when my mom died. And, they had lost my sister 5 years earlier. To bury a kid was not an easy thing. And then my mom died, and my younger sister and I thought my dad would die of a broken heart, because I'd never seen him. He was so broken. He was literally broken. To see this strong man so broken. And then 3 weeks later, after my mom dies, my niece gets killed. It was my oldest brother's only child. And my dad was like, I haven't even processed your mom. I don't know what to do with this. And we're like, there is no way Dad's going to make it through this. And, 2 months after all of that, my dad calls me and he's like, Patty, I've made a decision. I can sit here and look at four walls and feel sorry for myself and make excuses and wait to die, or I can reinvent myself. And I am going to reinvent myself. I've made a decision. And I'm like, what? This 87-year-old man is going to reinvent himself? What's that going to look like? And you know what? For him, his reinvention was he had to put himself out there in the unknown at 87, somebody who is introverted. And he started by opening up my mom's recipes and deciding, I'm going to teach myself how to cook. my mother would just be rolling over thinking about this. And so then he starts bringing stuff to the church, and then he decides he's going to volunteer at church. And my dad hated volunteering. My mom always wanted him to, and he's like, no. And he just kept putting himself out there. And for an 87-year-old man who suffered all this loss, who's introverted, to put himself out there, to me, that has been like, you're never too old. Like, life is always going to be scary. We're always going to be tested, but we always have choice. And it's our decisions to move ourselves forward. Focus forward. Focus forward. Take the learning. Don't hang on to the garbage, to the stuff that makes us feel bad or makes us feel weak. Take the learning and move forward. And that's his thing. He's like, you got to focus forward. He had a big accident. He fell, church volunteering. His blood pressure dropped. He broke every bone from here to here. This past spring, he was in the hospital. We thought that's it. Comes back from the hospital. And you know what he said? He said, I have one thing to focus on right now, healing. That's it. And that's what he did. He did what he could from where he was. He goes, I can't walk at the mall right now, so I'm going to ride on my stationary bike. I can't do a whole lot of other things. So he was tinkering, fixing some doorbell that wasn't working, doing crossword puzzles to keep his brain going. And boy, you would never guess that man had that accident. I mean, it was amazing, shocking, but he's always focused on what he can do, not on what he can't do. And at that age, there's a lot of things you can't do, but he's not focused on it. And I think you can take that lesson in any stage we are in life. Focus on what you want, focus on what you can do. That's vision driven. That's focusing on what's possible and not on what's not possible. And I think as we age, we tend to start listening to people complain, talk about their problems and their pains. And it's got pains and it's got issues, but he just doesn't focus on them. I mean, you really like what you put, where your attention goes, energy flows. You focus on misery, you're going to get more misery and you're going to attract misery. You focus on possibility and opportunity and being optimistic and on things that you actually can do. And then you'll come up with ideas of, oh, there's something else. And then you'll meet other people that are still in that space. And so, I think that's the whole point of my book and the whole point of, igniting your what's next evolution. And it should be exciting. It's different seasons. What season are you in? And, I hope that this has inspired some of the listeners to ignite their what's next, because no matter where you are, we're always going to be evolving and there's always going to be change. And, it's just, what lens are you going to put on? And I'd say put on a vision driven lens. It's a lot more joyful and freeing. And, it's about being alive. There's a saying, you can live 90 years or you can live the same year 90 times, and we've all been given free will and the power to choose. So every day it's your choice of what you do with your time and how you're going to think, and what you're going to make of a situation that might be not good. Someone makes you feel bad or, betrays you or whatever. It's like, it can make you feel bad. It's what you choose to do with it that's going to be the game changer for you, and that's why it's just so important. I think that meditation piece every day to get really grounded in, okay, what's this day going to look like? And, some days we have more oomph than others, but, every day, again, is a lifetime in miniature and you get to choose it. And if you knew that today was your last day or this was your last week, you'd be probably looking at things a little bit differently than, we normally do. So, and it's not like you have to look like you're dying, but at the same time, how are we leaving our children? I mean, being moms, being parents, I think the best thing we can do is be amazing role models to our kids.
So inspiring. Thank you, Patty.
Well, thank you, Bonnie. I really enjoyed talking to you and your questions, and I appreciate that you read the whole book and just to get your insights on it and have some conversation with it. As it relates to, even motherhood, because, moms are strong and moms, I just want moms to feel worthy no matter where they are in life and no matter what they're doing or they haven't done. They still got their whatever going to be in front of them. And you can always, even if we're having a hard time with our kids, even adult kids, and maybe someone doesn't have a great relationship, but you can still show up the way you want to show up every day. And even if you don't get the response that you want, you are still teaching them something. You might be impacting more than you think you are.
So encouraging and so inspiring. I really enjoyed our time and our discussion today.
Me
Thank
too,
you.
Bonnie. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Next, I will share a 30-second note. Tabano Lifestyle is an inspired clothing brand that has tees, tanks, hoodies, journals, mugs, hats, and bracelets for inspired people. Julie Lomaka started it because she is passionate about spreading a positive message. I have a few pieces and can speak to their quality, especially my hat and tank. Please use the code MOM15, that's MOM15, for 15% off. Thank you. Thanks for listening. I believe by speaking honestly on all topics surrounding motherhood, it sheds love and light to them and is useful to parents. We're all in this together. If you want to buy a copy of one of my books, please check out booksbybonnylippincott.com. My goal is to have a new podcast episode published every Wednesday. If you enjoyed an episode, please share it with a friend or post on social media. As always, please remember to be kind to yourself. Lastly, if you're looking for a place to support moms and babies, Baby2Baby is a national nonprofit organization that provides children living in poverty with diapers, clothing, and all the basic necessities that every child deserves. To learn more and get involved, please visit www.baby2baby.org.